All right, all right. Hey, I'm Johnny. I'm here live with my friend Eric Mathis, and Eric's here to talk about Victory Garden Roundtable coming up here next Monday, and getting the word out for that. Eric is something of a legend around his university, where he speaks about these topics quite eloquently. Eric, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. How are you doing, Johnny?
I'm swell, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm stoked to see this roundtable come up. You're gonna have Ryland Englehart. He's of course gonna be the he's going to be moderating, and Ryland is a co-producer of the Kiss the Ground documentary that over 1 billion people have seen. Quite impressed with how many people you know have heard about this, investing in our soils to solve our biggest problems. And yeah, that'll be great to see him. And of course, yourself, Eric, you're going to be sharing about some of the new technology, cutting edge, that's people are using, and some of the benefits we're seeing from that. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, like something that's not really connected within a lot of people's minds is basically connecting living soil, regenerative agriculture to AI. And from listeners out there that don't know me, I'm Catholic. I'm presently at Mount St. Francis Monastery, where I'm discerning potentially becoming a Franciscan monk or friar, is the actual technical term. But most people only compute or understand what a monk is. So that's the easiest way that I talk about um, where I am and what I'm presently doing. But I mentioned that is most of my work over the past 20 years has been around regenerative agriculture, but most recently with some of my PhD research, I got pretty deeply into the field of artificial intelligence and ethics as it relates to the Vatican's what they call the Rome Call, where Pope, after about 3 years, Pope Francis came out January 1st during the World Peace Day with his talk entitled Artificial Intelligence and Ethics. So, what we're trying to do is move us off that path that we're presently on in a very deregulated AI emerging sector and move it on a regulated path. And it turns out that that same pathway has a lot to do with regenerative agriculture and chronic illness and soil depletion and a number of other things. So,
Awesome. Yeah, that's important stuff. So yeah, looking forward to hearing you share about that. I'm also a big fan of Kelly Ryerson is going to be there. Kelly, of course, is the glyphosate girl on Instagram, where she's banging the drum about how toxic this chemical is and how widespread it's getting. Some people say we're using up to 3 pounds per person per year in our country, and just a tiny bit can wipe out a whole acre as an herbicide. It kills everything green, and of course it's also registered as an antibiotic. It's killing our soil, and yeah, she's great about getting the word out about that. She'll be sharing a little bit. This is my big issue. I think that this may be the main culprit for our dozens of health conditions going parabolic. And yeah, this is something that nobody's talking about. America's health epidemic is reaching critical proportions, and you compare our health with other countries, it's amazing the difference. We're spending more than 10 times, or we're using more than 10 times the amount that Europe is, and we're really seeing the difference. We're living 5 and 6 years less than we should be. And yeah, nobody's talking about that. We're the sickest country on the planet. We got to change that. And yeah, this is such an important issue. You know, I I just got to throw it in there. Again, we're spraying this stuff as a desiccant on our crops at harvest. So especially our wheat and our grains and our beans. And so this is just so crazy because we know how toxic it is. It's an EPA report just came out recently. 93% of our endangered species are at risk because of this chemical. Monsanto, or Bayer, the maker, they had to pay $12 billion with a B, and they were happy to pay that. They settled to pay that much. Back in 2018, a lot of us thought that, well, this is great. So now we're going to get action on this. We can get this out of our food and water. but each year it's getting worse how much we're using, and spraying it on our crops like this as a desiccant is just crazy, and it's not something we need to be doing. In 2006, this is when they started doing that. So this is something that, so many things we would need to phase out over time, but this one, we can put an end to it tomorrow and we'd be just fine. We could figure it out. So, a lot of the things that you're going to be talking about at this roundtable is how to farm responsibly, and a lot of these concepts, whether it's permaculture or investing in that soil, all those microbes, you know, um, it's a whole ecology in that soil, and
Mhm.
antibiotics like this totally decimate that. So I know you're a friend of Dan Kittredge. He talks a lot about this. Uh, did you want to share about that for a second?
Yeah, there's several on ramps that I could take in terms of my passion around regenerative agriculture. Just historically, I was up in Central Appalachia trying to, me and many other key leaders were trying to figure out how to change the economic conditions in one of the most unhealthy regions in the country, what the CDC called the diabetes belt. And while we were doing it, we were able to drastically lower type 2 diabetes within 2 years by getting healthy food in people's guts. So we were trying to figure out how to scale that. And we started looking up to mountaintop removal sites, which is basically moonscape. And we figured out a pretty innovative way to rebuild soils. And that's when I got introduced to regenerative agriculture and permaculture and food forest. And then from there, just kind of stumbled into Dan Kittredge's work. And what's interesting about his work is one is some people, for me, um, some people fight too much over concepts. Call it permaculture, call it regenerative agriculture, call it what you will. At the end of the day, like whatever is producing the highest amount of life, promoting the most nutrient density within foods, you can call it blah blah farming. Like I don't care as long as it's nutrient dense food on the back end and it's not delivering chemicals to our guts and to our bodies. Um, that being the case, regenerative agriculture, some people don't like it, but it's a very, very broad, not very clearly defined concept that, yes, some corporations are attempting to take over. But it's not a word game for me. So if we just stick to our practices in regenerative agriculture that produces nutrient density, we'll kind of trudge through an unnecessary battle around discursive battle around words and really drill down on what really matters, which is getting healthy food in people's guts and chipping away at this chronic illness epidemic. But to zero in on like what I really love about Dan Kittredge's work is it's not to mug down with fighting over what concept or how you define it. They're doing some really cutting edge stuff agriculture actually is in terms of how it produces nutrient density within food. And then the practices, that's when it comes into adding additional granite dust that provides trace minerals within soils. You can build in biochar by charging that with a variety of strategies that can act as a hotel for your biologicals, and it reduces the likelihood of those trace minerals leaching out of the soil. And at the end of the day, super nutrient dense food can be produced. And if we keep our eye on that, as opposed to arguing over words, because that's not really the battle we should be fighting. Because if that is, they're gonna beat us every time. We're gonna be too obsessed with arguing over concepts and not really concerned with what really matters. And that's one thing I really love about the Bionutrient Food Institute is that focus on reintroducing trace minerals and nutrient density. And then they're doing a lot of really good synergistic work with John Kempf, who is spearheading some of the stuff around building plant immune systems or the immunology related to plants and how that directly relates to our gut biome. So we begin thinking of the soil as an exterior biome to our interior biome. And all those movements are, for me, defining the actual scientific, tangible, empirical characteristics of what it means to engage in regenerative agriculture. That was long-winded, but that's my response. Sorry, Johnny.
No, that's great. That's perfect. That's exactly what I was asking about there. And then our next guest is going to be on the round table is of course Lisa Stoke. You know, I'm a big fan of hers. All the work she's done as an activist against the likes of Monsanto and all these GMOs, and she's representing their next seven. What's she going to be sharing about?
So her organization is actually for the next seven. So it's for the next seven generations. Her personal perspective is, as well as many other perspectives, is to focus not just on our generation, but seven generations out, and which is beautiful. I'm 100% on board with that, as well as many other folks. But the next seven, we're going to have next seven garden kits, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. But she and I, as well as many other folks that have been involved with working at the federal level, I've been burnt when I worked with the environmental movement around renewable energy and all that kind of stuff, and working with Van Jones and ushering in the green movement. But she spearheaded a lot of what translated to the organic movement with the Obama administration. And through that, a lot of the successes that they obtain, she learned very quickly, like many of us, is they don't necessarily stick and they can easily be watered down. So she's going to share a little bit about that experience and how we're proactively ensuring within this campaign that that doesn't happen. So what we're doing with our national policy strategy is putting something in front of the White House and saying, like, this is what we want. Here's our action plan. But two, we're also building it on the ground. So regardless of what the federal administration and state level agencies decide to support, which we hope that they do support what we're building, we're going to build it anyways. So she's going to talk about, like, a fundamental part of that is the next seven Victory Garden Kit. So that will be rolling out January, so people can start preparing for planting their gardens. We're looking for like just hundreds of thousands of gardeners. It's stupid simple to be a part of this movement. Is just go in the backyard or get a bucket on your porch if you're in New York, throw some soil in it, and then we'll have a garden kit that basically walks through all the processes, very, very simple, on growing bionutrient food. And we fundamentally believe that what we've forgotten as we become more and more disconnected with the soil is, for example, some of us that were in very indigenous, forested areas and everything like that, and rummaging through the forest. During that time, for thousands upon thousands of years, how we identified the best food for us was through our nose. So we would just smell it out, and we would be able to smell um, how nutrient dense that food is, because the food communicates to us through, like, if you went and just bought normal organic basil, although it's very aromatic, and I know this from experience because I've grown bionutrient basil, and not only myself, but all of our chefs that we sold it to were like, what in the world is this stuff? This is from another planet. What we're trying to do through that, the National Garden Campaign, is just awaken those ancient senses to where, hopefully we begin rebooting. And then not only once it hits people's noses, once it hits people's guts, we're going to reawaken to very, very old traditional gardening processes that arguably, no matter where you were in the world 10, 15,000 years ago, our our bodies evolved in building that kind of relationship with food. So we're hoping through that gardening campaign that as people grow that food, smell that food, eat that food, it'll just kind of naturally awaken people to what the restoration economy feels like from the gut up, from the soil up.
I love it.
So hopefully that answers your question about Lisa. Like, yeah, she's going to be sharing, some of the I didn't mean to speak over you. She's going to be sharing some of her experience in the past and what we're doing to ensure that this is a proactive campaign that will translate to successes over the coming years.
That's great. Yeah, she's great. And you know, yeah, it's just so important to, inspire people, equip them, and get them back to yeah, get our hands in the soil. This has been shown to increase our longevity by an average of 10 years, people who get their hands in the soil. And yeah, this is what's in our blood. It's what we've done across all our cultures for so long, and it solves these huge issues we have, whether it's the toxicity or the tyranny and the fragility of these supply chains, or how destructive they can be. Is getting back to what we've been doing locally. We got this big hurricane in Florida here. There's going to be areas that are without power for a bit, and when we have our self-reliance in our communities, we have that resilience. That's huge. So yeah, that's a great effort you guys are doing. And then our next see who else we got here is John Jackson of Comfort Farms is going to be on the roundtable. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's among all the other kind of rock stars that are on the panel. He's definitely one of my favorites, and just because a lot of my work, just personally, being a part of the core team that got industrial hemp legalized across the United States, we worked directly with veterans to build a successful campaign around that. And a part of it is when I was working with those veterans, very, very, very close friends of mine. I learned about what's called the Michigan studies, that basically they were researching what was happening when veterans were putting their hands in the soil, and it was curing their PTSD and a lot of other issues that unfortunately lead to a lot of our veterans committing suicide, severe depression, anxiety, et cetera, from directly correlated to PTSD. So when I started interacting with him and talking to him and inviting him to be a part of this roundtable, we didn't have enough time to talk. I mean, I imagine we would talk for days, because he's committed his life to what he calls agrotherapy on his farm, Comfort Farms, where he works with veterans to basically acclimate back into interacting with folks on a day-to-day within their communities, their homes, their work. And he's very much way ahead of the curve in the model of what other folks are trying to do with chronic illness or addiction. Some people are leveraging farms for having the same effects that occurs with veterans to cure addiction and other related things related to like trauma and everything. But John Jackson is just, I don't know, he's a badass, and I can't wait for him to kind of share with everybody his in-depth knowledge about agrotherapy, as well as his just deep knowledge on seed genetics and some of the stuff that he's been doing and kind of collecting some global heirloom seeds and breeding, just really not breeding for yield, which is what we've been doing for over 100 years, but really doing what Dan Barber's doing and many other chefs are doing and farmers are doing, is starting to breed the way we used to, for nutrient density and flavor and everything. So he's very much a part of that movement of awakening these ancient senses to the way that we used to relate to gardeners. At the end of the day, we are all gardeners. So
I love that. Yeah, that's it's such an important initiative, and yeah, that kind of rolls into you got the We the Gardeners platform that you guys are putting together to really push this initiative. And I know there's some people putting together some. I met Stephen Polk. He's interested in doing a documentary on this, and really putting together some production value in that. So yeah, it's
yeah,
such a great movement you got going.
I didn't mean it. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Um, yeah. So yeah, we have a a rock star team of folks within the film industry. And one of the more exciting ones is related to open documentary project that we started in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where I grew up. A filmmaker, Tanya Sheffield, a gardener by the name of Brenda Taylor, and a lot of other community folks are situated in one of the oldest African American communities of its kind in the country. And they just have this beautiful story of pre-slavery, post-slavery, and how gardening was a fundamental part of not only being able to purchase land, but building from those gardens, entrepreneurship, all that kind of stuff that led to very resilient and vibrant communities in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Um, and what they're doing is they're one of my close friends with MIT Open Doc Lab. They spearheaded this this platform for, instead of me as a director coming in and setting the stage and cutting and editing the way I envision a documentary should be in a linear fashion. What an open documentary does is it flips the script. You hand over the camera to the community folks themselves. You train them how to tell their own story, and that's what they're doing there. And as a part of that, they're going to be a model for other community, what we call seed projects across the country to adopt, adapt, and integrate that into them telling their own story of the plate from soil to food. I mean, imagine a scenario of in Happy Hill, they've been growing bionutrient food there for 3 years. Brenda's just an amazing partner. But imagine a scenario where they're going to tell their own story, but she's sharing with the entire country how to plant, grow, harvest, and then sharing how um, aromatic that basil plant is, and then they potentially deliver that basil plant to one of the local restaurants and have a chef talk about, like, I've been buying basil for 10 years now, and this is the most potent basil I've ever smelt in my life. I mean, just all those kind of stories. But back to your point in terms of filmmaking, is that's a fundamental part of our campaign. Is we're leveraging these kind of cutting edge approaches to documentary filmmaking, open documentary filmmaking. We're also going to be integrating interactive documentary filmmaking, which will basically land as a platform that's interactive on learning about the chronic illness epidemic, that the history of it, how it happened within the U.S., and then starting chronicling what we are beginning to do about it. And then you can actually potentially, hopefully, start seeing, the data curves and everything moving in the opposite direction that they're moving presently. And then the final component, which is a component I'm working on in my neck of the woods here in what they call Kentuckiana, which is Indiana and Kentucky. It's this kind of region that I'm working in. Is we're working with multiple school systems across the region and integrating a garden-based STEAM curriculum. So it's garden through science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And a part of their telling the story of the plate from soil to food is they're also integrating arts into it. So my little title down here that says Living Architecture Systems Group, um, we're launching what I believe to be the first living documentary in the world. It's a concept that came out of MIT, but we're getting kids and parents and school systems to tell a story of the kids getting their hands in the soil, learning how the bacteria stimulate serotonin, builds up their immune system, and then they take the natural dyes, distill it down into, or the flowers, distill it down into dyes and paint different, visions of how they see their community, how they want to see their community, whatever. But some of those natural dyes are actually going to land in one of Living Architecture Systems Group's immersive living architecture system up at Indiana University. So there's going to be the beautiful like yellow dye. You'll be able to go in, click your phone on it, and basically experience an array of all these stories throughout our region of kids, parents, school systems, teachers reestablishing a relationship to the soil through arts. I know that was a long-winded answer to your question, but we have a really, really exciting and pretty complex team of filmmakers and documentarians and everything like that. And at the end of the day, that just uh, um, it makes everything transparent, and then we can leverage that in some ways to get initiatives done on the ground. So if a school system is not, wanting to integrate a very, very easy garden-based curriculum into the school for a variety of um, um, I, for a variety of reasons, I won't use certain explicatives to explain the frustration of trying to get the curriculum into, for example, public schools. But if the world's watching, it kind of makes those school systems more receptive to being open to um, getting our kids to move away from using phones and plugging back into nature again, which is badly needed.
I tell you what, it's a way bigger deal than people would hope, and these artificial dyes that are in our so much of our food, they're banned in so many countries.
Yep.
They're turmeric and paprika are popular for colorants in Europe, to bring that color, make things red or yellow. And here we're using these. They're finding that all these different yellow number 5 and red number 30 and blue number 20, they're all toxic and they're all specific kind of cancers. So it's a huge issue. And along the lines of that, I posted down here in the comments. We talk about this farm bill that's trying to get pushed through. The likes of Monsanto are lobbying for a liability shield for a lot of the harms that are being caused in our food system, specifically these pesticides. And this is just wild. This is going after our constitutional rights at a fundamental level.
Yeah.
Our Fifth Amendment there is meant to protect us, give us access to due process. To go for justice and for those that would harm our loved ones, and they're getting at the root of that. We don't have a liability shield for anything like this, any product or service, except the vaccine schedule. And we've seen that since they got that liability shield for those vaccines, they've gone up fivefold or more than that. And so yeah, we need to be working on making our food safe again, not giving these these poison companies a license to kill. And so this is a huge issue. And if people
Yeah.
want to go and check out that link at healthrevolutionsusa.org, they can contact their congressman and be a part of this movement to help wake people up. So many of our representatives, they're not aware of these issues. There's a massive disinformation campaign by the likes of Monsanto. We caught them not too many years ago having a whole troll army that their job is tasked to just answer every comment, every post on social media, even just small from people like you and me that would be critical of the likes of Monsanto, whether it's GMOs or these pesticides. And they got all their talking points all lined up, and yeah, so that's what we're seeing is these big corporations. They're using their money to push their agenda. And you talk about misinformation. The two biggest sources of misinformation are coming a lot of times from our government on behalf of these industry interests. They get so thoroughly captured, such as the EPA and or these corporations themselves. And a lot of times they're doing it under these different umbrella organizations, these different think tanks, these different they make themselves out to be nonprofits, and then they're just there to push these agendas of these corporations. So if people want to help out with standing up to this farm bill that they're pushing, people can join us there at healthrevolutions.org and yeah, join the movement. Eric, I
Yeah,
appreciate you so much for joining today. Is there anything else you want to talk about before
yeah, on
we
those lines, like, it's not that I take a stand with any one of those particular movements in terms of insulating the ability of the people to sue for any kind of damages around that. My position is twofold. Is one, just open up NIH to where NIH is actually working for the people and not for the corporation. Let the science tease things out. So if the science finds that like glyphosates or other drugs that pharmaceutical companies use on the populations as negative consequences, as it stands right now, NIH is working more for those corporate interests than for the people. So that needs to change. And the other one, from my experience in coal country, for example, within West Virginia, if there was a move to insulate coal companies from any kind of damages related to coal slurry being dumped into people's drinking water, that would be problematic. A lot of lawyers, and I worked within the legal arena for quite some time, if you insulate these companies from any kind of legal firm from taking it to the court of law and letting the courts decide whether or not this is having a negative health impact onto the populations, you hit the nail right on the head. That's chipping away at our democracy. That doesn't even represent anything close to the systems that were put in place by the founders. So, in speaking to that, in my own experience, I've seen how environmental law firms that I've worked with in coal country, it keeps that large corporate apparatus that's made up of a bunch of companies in check. So, I mean, we worked on a consolidated class action lawsuit against Massey Energy. I couldn't imagine a scenario where Massey Energy at that time was insulated from being sued for literally putting toxic slurry into people's water. It later on led to Don Blankenship doing some federal time and everything. But that's a very, very concrete way of framing exactly what you're talking about is, like, let our courts do what they're supposed to do. I mean, if the corporations aren't doing anything wrong, don't hide behind the court system's natural disposition to be able to regulate you. And that's exactly what they're trying to do with this farm bill, is insulate themselves from being sued. which is, I can't even believe, among many other things that I'm experiencing today, I can't even believe that's even crossing my lips that they're trying to pull that off with a farm bill.
Well, the crazy thing about it too is they're trying to justify that by saying, we can't grow our food without these poisons. There's going to be starvation, when that couldn't be further from the truth, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Most
completely agree.
countries grow their food like we're talking about much safer. Their health outcomes are much better. Across all history, across all our cultures, we never use this poison. And it's only the mid '90s when we really ramped up this use of glyphosate, which I think is the main culprit. It's back 100 years ago, we spent 20% of our income on our food, and now we're spending 10%. And back then we spent 10% on our health and our healthcare. And now we're spending 20%. So those numbers have flipped to where we're spending our money on our healthcare, and they've subsidized the food to you know uh, they're making it harder to grow food the right way. You can't sell raw milk to your neighbor. There's a lot trying to make it so you can't hardly use the water to do yourselves a market garden in Oregon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so and then they want to subsidize, and they want to give these handouts to people using all these chemicals to it's welfare for big poison, and we just
Yeah,
got
it's
to
called the
start.
revolving door. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
exactly it. So, well, Eric, I sure appreciate you coming and sharing today. Where can people find you, and you got any parting words for everyone?
What's that?
I said, where can people find you? I put in the comments a link to the roundtable coming up Monday. And
Mhm.
do you have anything else you'd like to share?
No, it's just the beginning. It's our inaugural launch. So we're going to be releasing various other things after that, leading up to the January um, launch, and then hopefully inviting tons of people to grow bionutrient food across the country next year. And you be the judge. Don't believe me. Grow it yourself, and um, go and grab some basil from the store, and then your bionutriently grown basil, and then it'll be very, the difference will be very clear. So I
Yeah,
just
you
want
can
to
really.
openly invite all your listeners to just support the campaign and jump on board.
Yeah, we're the food doesn't have the nutrients it should, right? So, I think
Yeah.
the best way we can love ourselves and our communities at this point is yeah, investing in agriculture done responsibly, just like you're talking about, and the right way. And the more we're doing that ourselves, the more we're getting the benefit. A little exercise and fresh air and sunshine, and they say you even absorb the vitamin B through your skin when you're there working with the soil. So,
Mhm.
that's really cool. But yeah, poison free is the way to be. Let's save the seeds and share them, and plant paradise everywhere. I love what you're doing, Eric. Thank you for joining me today. And yeah, let's plant paradise everywhere.
Thank you, Johnny.
Hey, thanks, Eric.
All right.